The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, we have Tom Terwilliger joining us. Tom is an extraordinary athlete, an entrepreneur, and a motivator. He's considered a leading authority on the science of achievement. He is the author of 7 Rules of Achievement, also the author of Winning the Inner Game of Confidence, and his latest book, Why Smart Goals May Be Dumb. Tom developed a TV show called Muscle Sport U.S.A. that was ultimately picked up by Fox Sports Net and featured Tom as the host. He has a ton of achievements. He is what I call a serious high achiever. He also trained in martial arts with some legendary martial artists. And he also coached the Special Olympics weightlifting team, and that team won gold several times. So welcome, Tom, to the Naturally Inspired Podcast.
Really
my gosh, it's so cool because I've admired you and Dawn for years, just watching your athletic journeys and, looking at your posts and seeing posts from your family. And I know you have a nephew, right, that's into martial arts?
Yes, he's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy now.
Yeah. And so my son is into that.
No kidding, really?
Yes, he's totally into MMA. He's 16.
16.
Yeah. And he's been training now for about a year and a half, somewhere around there.
That is, yeah. I mean, I tell you something, that's one of my saving graces, bodybuilding. Certainly God, but bodybuilding and martial arts has, bodybuilding saved me from a life that would have been just awful, down the road, outlaw biker, the whole thing.
Right.
Martial arts saved my ass in the street a few times.
Well, I'll tell you what, this kid is in a good mood every single day because he trains every single day. And when he doesn't train, he's disappointed he didn't get to train, and he just eats it up. So I'm just thrilled, really. Scared at first.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was freaking out at first.
As a mom, I don't blame you. But I guess the bottom line is this: it's just sort of like, with a teenager, there are certainly worse things. I mean, him having no direction, having no focus, having nothing to engage with on a daily basis. You know where that leads?
Yes.
I mean, it'd be so much worse than even if he gets a broken arm, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so much. It's the potential of so much. Where this will keep him engaged, focused, disciplined. It's going to be a life changer for him. So I think it's awesome.
It already has been. Really, it has been. How old's your nephew?
I think he's about 23 right now, 24, possibly just 24. Yeah. Yeah, which is hard to believe. I mean, he would,
I know, right?
I got 2 nephews from my brother's boys. And last thing I remember, I mean, I blinked and they were no longer the little kids in the footy pajamas at the top of the stairs, waiting to get their Christmas gifts. It was like, now they're all of a sudden, they've grown up doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
And they have deep voices.
It happened. I do remember one point in between the footy pajamas and the Christmas kids, we call them, and where they are now. And that was, we went back to New York to visit my brother and the boys. And it was that turning point with the one who's practicing jiu-jitsu now. He was, I think he was 12 or 13. And, 2 years before when I visited, they couldn't get enough of Uncle Tom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now he comes walking out of the house with his skateboard. He's like, "Oh, Uncle Tom, you're going to be here a while, right? All right, yeah, I'll see you later." And he walked the skateboard, and we never saw him again the entire trip.
I know.
I think we had dinner one time. That was it, man.
I know.
We knew things had changed. That was it.
Yeah. Well, we always start out on here with getting to know our guest and getting a little bit of background on you. So thank you so much, first of all, for being on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. Really, really excited. So to get our audience acquainted with you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born?
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, actually.
I hear that.
Shortly thereafter, I'm the youngest, the absolute youngest of 6 kids. I have 3 older sisters,
Ooh.
and you could say 2 older brothers, but one of them is only 5 minutes older than me. He's my identical twin brother.
Okay.
The other is substantially older. He's a former New York police officer and a martial arts expert, lives in West Virginia. But
Nice.
yeah, I'm the absolute youngest of 6 kids. We were born in Brooklyn, but quickly moved out. I think I only spent the first year or so there. Then we moved to a little further inland in Long Island.
Okay.
And then kept moving. We moved until we wound up landing in a little town called Massapequa Park. And interestingly, that Massapequa Park has sort of several people that are notable, as you might say.
Really?
I certainly do not consider myself one of them, but there are others. The whole Baldwin,
I would argue that, but okay.
Alec Baldwin, Billy Baldwin, Danny Baldwin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Danny was one of my. Of course, Danny, of course, has to be the black sheep of the Baldwin family.
Yeah.
But he was one of our buddies. He was one of our crew. And
Cool.
Brian Sensa from the Stray Cats.
Oh yeah, I love Brian Setzer. He's
Brian Setzer was great. Yeah, we used to hang out. He was fantastic. We didn't realize how good they were. I remember hearing them for the first time at a Battle of the Bands in high school.
Oh, yeah.
I walked in, I was like, oh my God, these guys are, they were literally rocking the place, And then, of course, less than a year later, they had a record contract. And so they're a no. He's a notable anyway. And so is Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Certainly can't include myself in that crew, but hey, some level of accomplishment here.
I had never even heard of that place, though, of that town. So that's really interesting.
It's a great little town in Long Island. Of course, in the later years, we my brother and I, we kind of it was a nice mellow town until we were old enough to ride motorcycles and raise hell, and then I think the whole town went to crapper.
Well,
you guys single-handedly destroyed the place.
Were you guys running the streets and stuff like that? I grew up in Canada, like on the West Coast on Vancouver Island, Victoria, British Columbia. So totally different culture than what you grew up in, really. Mm-hmm. And when we see movies and stuff like that, when I was a kid, we seen the New York kids, they're hanging out on the street, playing handball, doing all that stuff. Was that kind of like how you grew up? Absolutely.
It certainly wasn't Manhattan by any means, or Bronx or Brooklyn, but that's exactly how we grew up the same way. We played handball. We were cutting school all the time. I got Harley Davidson literally in 10th grade. So I had this chopper motorcycle in 10th grade.
Oh my gosh.
For me, which was not a good idea, not a good thing to have.
Right.
Because, once you have a motorcycle, and no one else had a Harley Davidson in high school. So I started riding the streets of Manhattan, going into New York, just looking for places to hang out and guys to ride with. And, when I would see a street full of Harley Davidsons parked in some seedy bar, and here I am, I'm 17 years old, I'd go wandering in. I wound up hooking up with the wrong people. And several years, I just went way down the wrong path. And at first it was all about the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the bikes,
Right.
Literally, I got caught up with the wrong crew, and it wasn't about that anymore. It was really organized crime, and just it was a path that for me, with the values that I grew up with, was the right path. And I thought it was. Hey, this is cool. I want to be a rebel. I felt a little rejected early on.
Yeah, I want to back up a little bit here because I know I've done a little homework, a little bit.
Yes, you have. I think you have. I can't imagine you haven't.
So I want to back up a little bit and just kind of, how did you get to that spot? What was your school life like as, a younger kid? What was going on there?
Well, my brother and I, when we moved to Massapequa Park, we were about 6 years old. So we were in a new school. And anytime you switch schools and you go someplace new, it's always a little scary, a little frightening. You got to get out there, make some friends and stuff. And there were some bullies, and I remember getting bullied quite a bit. And then both my brother and I were diagnosed with dyslexia. We had some learning capabilities that were challenging, learning challenges because of the dyslexia. And we were hyperactive, so always getting in trouble, always causing mischief because we were rebelling out. It was hard to learn with the system in which they were trying to teach us. And I get it. They want everyone to flow through the system accordingly. But we weren't doing that because of the challenges that we were facing. And interesting.
Well, I would argue that the system's not really set up for boys either. I would argue that.
I agree. I don't know if it's set up for anyone, but
that's true. That's true.
But there are those that don't struggle as much. If your primary learning capabilities or primary learning mode is something other than, for me, it's very physical for the most part. It's very kinesthetic.
Yep.
And school for the most part, especially early on, is anything but that,
Yep.
And so it was a real challenge between that and the dyslexia. Absolutely. And started rebelling out, and the school system didn't know what to do. So they put us in special ed class. And the special ed class can be a challenge for anyone, even if they have serious disabilities or challenges.
Right.
But for someone who's already struggling, it becomes a black mark. And I tell you, it's something that, we're going to talk a little bit about, I hope, about some limiting beliefs later on. And going through that system and having the young friends who you thought were your friends, the ones you had just made friends with, you're just arriving in this city.
Yeah.
And just made some friends who did not want to hang out with you anymore. It leaves a scar of a disempowering belief in your soul almost,
Absolutely.
And so I had two choices at that point: roll over and become a victim, or stand up and fight. And I was no longer going to be bullied. It just wasn't going to happen anymore. But more empowering than that, quite honestly, wasn't really about me even being bullied. It was about what I saw was happening to my classmates, the ones that were truly challenged and disabled.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I saw Down syndrome kids being bullied and picked on. I was like, not having it. There was no way. So it began this experience of standing up for others, standing up for myself, and fighting, and doing so with my fist.
Right.
So it became a pattern, you might say.
Right.
And that pattern began to manifest even more and more and more. And I started studying martial arts early on. About 8 years old, I started studying martial arts. And so I became very capable in that respect.
Right.
So one thing led to another, and more trouble, and more trouble. And that ultimately leads to high school, where I get my first Harley Davidson.
Right. And they're hanging out in seedy dive bars.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of that was, again, it's so interesting how we manifest things, especially beliefs or things that we come to believe early on in our lives. Because I remember going into Manhattan with my parents. My grandparents lived in Manhattan. They were very affluent, but we never saw any of that money. But my grandparents were very affluent. And I remember driving into Manhattan with my parents and my siblings, a whole bunch of us crammed into the station wagon. And I remember one specific night, and I couldn't have been more than, 10 years old, 10 years old or so, as I was going through this experience with the special ed class, feeling completely disempowered and disassociated, disenfranchised from everybody. I remember we were not parked at a light, but we were stopped at a light. It was like on Broadway and 2nd Avenue. And I remember hearing this loud roar, like thunder. I roll down the window and I look out, and all of a sudden, we are surround 20 or 30 Hell's Angels on their choppers, and they're just sitting at the light. And I look over, and this one guy who had a scar across his face, he had this big helmet on with a horn sticking out, and he's on his chopper, and he looks over at me, and he winks, and boom, 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 and they take off. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God.
That's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
That's the coolest thing. And not only that, but it's power, it's brotherhood, friendship. I connected all those dots, and that's what I was seeking with that whole later in life. So that's how it manifested. And that's how I got caught up in that whole thing, because I believed what I assumed as a 9-year-old kid, this was what it was about. This is how I was going to find and manifest what I wanted as a kid in that school, being tormented and bullied and ultimately having to stand up for myself. So it all came around. It all came around.
Wow, that's so fascinating, because you think of that's just 1 minute, like 1 second in time.
Yeah,
really.
it was a brief moment.
Yeah, brief moment in time, and then it just shaped you.
It really did. There's no question about it. It
Wow.
shaped a lot of my beliefs that I later had to, and I'm still a big fan of motorcycles. I mean, I have my Harley Davidsons, my choppers. I'm still connected in that respect.
Yeah.
But it's from a different perspective. It's from a totally different perspective. You know? So I probably never let go of those beliefs and stuff. But the other aspect of it, I soon realized that this is not where I should be. This is not what I should be doing.
Right.
And that was in my early 20s. For about 5 years, I maintained that lifestyle until I wouldn't even say until I guess until I found the courage, but until I really realized that I'd been living small, hiding, and living a lifestyle that is not congruent with who I really am.
Right. Did you hit a rock bottom? Was there an event or something, or was it just the whole lifestyle got old for you?
It started to get old. I was beginning to like vacillate on the idea that I need to get out. I need to end this. I need to walk away. But it's not so easy to walk away from that lifestyle or these people.
I can't imagine they want you to walk away.
No. I mean, you're an insider for long enough, and it's like you don't walk away, you know.
Right.
So I couldn't find courage. I couldn't find the impetus, and not to mention the drugs and the alcohol keep you trapped. The drugs, the alcohol, the motorcycles, the lifestyle in itself, in many respects, keeps you trapped, keeps you cornered.
Right.
You have something, like you said, until you hit rock bottom or something happens, or you find God, something has to change for you to really manifest that change.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, and I've shared this story, and I'll make it quick, but it was one night I was in the clubhouse, and I remember I probably vacillated on this decision of walking away for about 2 years or so. Right. And so I was sitting there, and I looked in the mirror, glancing at myself, and it was a beat up old place, plywood. I mean, the place was a dump. And and I glanced at this mirror that was filthy, and I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. To me, I was like 23 years old. I looked like 40s and beat down. And then I started looking around who I was surrounded by. And I just, and I kid you not, a voice went off in my head. And, you know, we all have this little inner voice, and a lot of times it can be disempowering. Yeah. This particular voice was not the disempowering voice. This was almost a higher spiritual voice. It was like a connection to my higher self, and said, "You're done, walk away." It was like a whisper, but it was incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
I was like, what? I mean, I probably said what out loud.
Right.
And you're done, walk away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I walked away, I headed for the door, and then something happened that literally was the game changer, the life changer, the convincer that walking out that door, never looking back, was the right decision, was the right thing to do. Because as I walked through that door, I turned back and looked for a moment, and behind the bar, there was a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun cocked and ready to go for whatever reason, you know?
Yikes.
And someone must have pushed against the bar, and the thing hit the ground and went off and blew a massive hole right through the center of the bar where I was standing. Thank God I had vacated the spot, but thank God also no one else was standing there, because it blew a massive hole in this very spot that I had been standing just moments before. If I hadn't heard that voice, if I hadn't made that decision, if I hadn't mustered the courage to say, this is it, not one more Saturday night, not one more Friday night, I'm done. Push the drink back and walk out the door.
Right.
And so we have to learn. Every one of us has that little inner voice that if we listen, it will guide us in the right direction.
I couldn't agree more. And I can kind of relate. It's not as, such a dramatic story like that or anything, but I was at the time working when I was about 19, I was working at a restaurant, making really good money for a 19-year-old, making great tips and stuff. But I had that same experience of the inner voice. And I did look around and I saw people where I looked around and, there's people working in the kitchen that have been there 10 or 15 years. There's other waitresses that have been there many, many years. And I had that inner voice of, you need to get out of here.
Yeah.
It's time to make a change. So I can totally relate to that.
You can. And that's it. It doesn't have to be a dramatic story, because we don't know. We don't know what that shotgun blast is going to represent to somebody else. It may be a destroyed relationship. It may be a job that leads to nowhere and ultimately drugs and alcohol. We don't know. But if we don't listen, and it does take some courage, because
it does.
We can get comfortable in our circumstances. The better the devil we know than the devil we don't, right? We don't know.
Yep.
This is one of the things I teach. I teach something called experience the leap, and it's the leap process, taking that leap of faith.
Yep.
There's actually a process to it. And
because there's many people that are in jobs they hate right now. They despise, and it's making them miserable. But yet that fear prevents them from taking that.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about confidence a little bit later as well. I know this is one of the things to get onto. And one of the things that happens along the way is that every time we metaphorically or even physically or verbally say no to the decisions we know we should be making that can change our lives. And we may not know what we're leaping towards just yet. It's better, but we may not know. Maybe we just know that we have to leave our circumstances right now. No longer. We can't do it. And every time we say no to that, every time we resist that, every time we give in to the temptation to stay where we are because it's comfortable or familiar or whatever it might be, it weakens our confidence. The next time the voice shows up, we listen even less until eventually it doesn't show up anymore, or it shows up as a kick to the crotch. Right. It's sort of like, I've told you, now.
I'm going to make you.
Balls. That's right. I'm going to make you. And if we're fortunate enough to listen at that point, it might be more painful, but at least we still listen. Some people never listen. We have to learn to do so. So I was very fortunate. I listened.
Yeah, that is, I think that's so relatable on so many levels, because there's more people that are unhappy with what they're doing with their life than there are people that are happy. I really believe that. Yeah. And so if we can share our stories and talk about this kind of thing on a very honest and open level, it can give people that courage they need to make that change.
Absolutely. I agree. In fact, the more we help ourselves rise above our circumstances, whether it's listening to that inner voice or just making a conscious decision before the inner voice, because that inner voice is there. It may not be as audible as it was for you and I, but it's always there. It's always, I call it the whisper, the doubt, and then the slap in the face, right? It's just like,
you didn't listen.
Absolutely. And then it's going to start shouting at you, you know what I mean? For you and me, it was a little bit more shout. If we heard it that audibly, it was a shout. It was time. Maybe we've been time for a long time, But if we listen to that or consciously make a decision, well, I'm better than this. I can be doing more. I can be contributing more. I don't know what it is. All I know is this, and you've probably experienced this as well. When you make that decision, whether it's from the inner voice guiding you or not, when you make that decision, set some goals and objectives to do something more, to do something better, and you leave something else behind, all of a sudden the universe starts conspiring with you.
Yes.
It will present the opportunity. It will give you the space to move. It'll show you a path that would otherwise not have been presented before.
Oh, I've experienced that hundreds of times.
Me too. No question.
Hundreds of times. And I call that the magic of life. And I know that sounds kind of corny, but it really is, because it's unexplainable. Yeah. You can't explain why that happened to you or why that opportunity presented itself when it did. You can't explain it. But when you're like, some people call it flow state. I love that term too. When you're in your flow state, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, then the universe does conspire for you. And it's magical.
It is indeed. There's a great new book. Actually, it isn't new. It's a couple of years old, but I just finished reading it called The Rise of Superman. Have you read that yet?
Oh, see, here's a moment right here. Because I just wrote that title down for my son, because I was listening to a podcast. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast with an MMA fighter that was on it being interviewed, and he mentioned it. And so I jotted it down. It's in my phone right now.
Well, that's how it works. Now you got to take action. But it's a great book on really capturing the essence of and so many examples of how we can achieve absolutely unachievable things when we're in that flow state.
Yeah.
When we're in that integrated mind state, connecting with the energy of the universe and the world, other human being, we can get into a state where time slows down.
Yeah.
So it is an empowering state. Not easy to get into.
No.
Not easy to get into.
No. And I think that, when we talk about this kind of stuff, it can be a motivator, right? And it can be what people call that raw stuff. Right. And the raw stuff is good. Don't get me wrong. I love the raw stuff. But if it's not followed up by action steps and tangible things that you need to go, activities that you need to do after you've become motivated, then that doesn't work either.
I agree. Absolutely. I think it's, this is certainly universal, but Tony Robbins says it best. He says we must follow up once we make a decision, we have to follow it up with action, whether it's massive action immediately. You decide you need to lose weight, join the gym today. Now there's a caveat to that too, by the way. There's a downside to all of that, because there's also been some interesting studies and research, and I know from my own personal experience and working with people for the last 20 years on the subject of coaching, human performance, is that sometimes there's enough pain to get us to make a decision.
Yep.
Looking in the mirror, it's like, oh my God, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't get any clothes. I can't look this way anymore. I'm tired of being alone. And so we make a decision. I've got to lose 50. That's it. We join the gym, and making a decision, joining the gym, taking that one action can alleviate just enough of the pain that we take no further action. It cuts us down. So we have to watch that. We have to be careful of that, to be aware that it's actually part of the human state. We've hit the ceiling. Now, by making a decision, especially sharing it with others, which we've been told is an important thing to do, and it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's two steps here. We're at the ceiling. I can't take any more.
Right.
Now, I make a decision. I share it with someone. I take some action. Now I'm way down here again. I'm way down below my threshold again. And now all of a sudden something comes up. I joined the gym, but I haven't been able to get there. I went on a diet, but last week I had pizza. Anyway, so we have to be aware of that. It's something that does happen. It happens to all of us for the most part. So
I like that analogy, because we do hear about the breaking point quite a bit. Like, you're fed up, sick and tired of being sick and tired. But then when you do take an action, there's that relief. You get that little shot of, okay, but I haven't heard it explained that way. That's a really great way to explain it.
It's interesting, because when I had that experience of walking out of the clubhouse after that shotgun blast, and that place erupted. I won't go into the details and everything, but it just erupted, and the police showed up. It was bad. And the next day, I felt lost. I was like,
what do I do now?
This was my identity for the last 5 years. We're talking about taking that leap of faith. All that coaching that I do in this is about that process. And it's like, okay, now what?
Right.
You feel lost. You feel discombobulated. I tell you what, having something to do, having somewhere to go, having something to ground you is key in moving to that next level. For me, it was getting back into the gym, because I was training as a teenager and won a couple of bodybuilding contests as a teenager.
Okay.
The interesting thing is, winning bodybuilding competitions as a teenager became at some point incongruent with who I thought I was. I was a stupid kid who wanted to be a Hell's Angel, who wasn't good enough, who was disenfranchised. I wasn't a champion. I was just bodybuilding and entering competitions for the fun of it. I'm fun of it. Then all of a sudden I started winning trophies and becoming a champion. But I'm like, wait a minute. Unconsciously, I'm not a champion. That's not who I am. What I need to do is get a Harley Davidson and go down the wrong path. That's what I need to do.
So you sabotaged yourself.
I totally sabotaged.
Yeah.
Going back again, but I completely sabotaged. So once I made that decision, had the courage to follow through on it, getting back into the gym was the grounder for me. Getting back into the gym was like, okay, first step, start rebuilding the body. In the process of rebuilding the body, you start rebuilding the mind. You start creating a different mindset. I can overcome this. I can do this. I can take on that challenge. I can be disciplined. I can eat better. And then things start to change, and then you start thinking bigger into what else?
Yeah.
What else can I do?
Right.
So I would encourage anyone, certainly, just getting to the gym, working out, staying fit and healthy should be a part of anyone's life who wants better themselves, who wants to make some changes, manifest their magnificence in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
For me, it was a must.
Absolutely.
It may not be for everyone.
I believe that too. I believe, if you're not feeling healthy in your own body, then you're limiting yourself, you're limiting your mind.
Agreed.
And when you started out with limiting beliefs, if we can talk about that a little bit,
Sure.
We have stories in our mind, right? You were playing story in your mind of who you were believing yourself to be.
Yeah.
And those stories were then being played out in your actions. Right? So, as you kind of move through that process, what was it that helped you change your story?
Well, that is a great question. That creates a thought. What was it? You know what it was? It's interesting because I'm a big believer in this process as well. There's a lot of different human motivators, but certainly, and it's been clearly defined by others, pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
Different forms certainly are our greatest motivators in many respects. They can show up in a variety of forms. For a Christian, I don't want to go to hell.
Right.
It would be a
Right.
motivator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They may not be able to understand the pleasures of heaven and recognize how magnificent it might be, but I certainly don't want to be burning for eternity, right?
Right.
And so for me, I think the first motivating component in looking at that belief system about myself was how much pain it was causing.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just causing pain for myself in many respects. And like I said, my greatest motivator for becoming what I was, which was sort of like the bully killer when I was in school. They titled me the bully killer, and wasn't just for myself. It's like, okay, I could deal with it. But when you start bullying other people and hurting other people, that's when I can't tolerate it,
Right.
So I began to recognize how much pain it was causing my parents, older brother, who was a police officer in New York at the time. And I started recognizing how much pain it's causing them because of where their son, their brother is and what he's doing and the risk. You talk about being fearful of your son initially studying mixed martial arts and what might happen, I mean, you can imagine
an outlaw Harley Davidson gang member.
How do they sleep at night? So I began to recognize the pain that it was causing others as well as myself. And so that was the initial whisper. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep causing this pain. They don't deserve it. If I thought my parents were rotten and stinking and lousy, they deserve whatever they get. But no, they were fantastic people. They gave me tremendous values along the way and always encouraged me to do the best and supported me in anything and everything I wanted to do. So they didn't deserve it in the least bit. So I would say pain was the initial motivator.
Right.
Then that's what created the. Then again, shifting the belief, and again, even then, I was a disempowering believer. I understood that, hey, all I'm doing, and I never used back then, the use of the word manifestation wasn't even part of my vocabulary.
Right.
What the hell is manifestation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just knew that I was following a path that I had created for myself in the 4th grade, the 5th grade, that the system it created for me in many respects, and I bought into it.
Yeah. Yep.
You're not far enough, you'll never be anything.
Right.
And that's the path I knew. I was looking at that, and I knew it. And again, I didn't define it as a limiting belief per se, as I do today, but I began to recognize it. So the first thing was avoid the pain. No more pain. No more inflicting this pain on the people that I love and including myself. The second step was getting back into that gym. And along the way, beliefs began to change on their own. Taking action. We talk about action, right?
Yes.
You could sit and you can make a decision. This is what I'm going to believe. This is it. You know what I mean? But you know what? Your unconscious mind may have an entirely different idea in mind. And it is in charge.
Right.
Your unconscious mind is the one steering the wheel most of the time, unless we take hold of that wheel and we decide consciously what direction we're going.
Right.
So there's a process I call it's the do then believe model. So I began to do something I knew was empowering, something I knew would change my body and start to change my belief system, make me feel better about myself is really what I wanted to do. And along the way, the belief system started changing. I can do this. I can do more. I got encouragement, and the universe provides.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy who owned the gym and wound up being my coach, Tony Pandolfo, along the way. And he began to encourage me, say, hey, you got good genetics, kid. I like the way you train. You're here every day. In fact, you need to take a day off. Don't come in 7 days a week. Take a rest. So he started encouraging me.
Right. In a sense, you were being fed every time you were going there, a little bit every day.
Absolutely. And it really wasn't, some people say, well, that's about ego. It wasn't about ego. It was about, potential is really what it was about.
Yeah.
And
you were borrowing someone else's belief in you before you had your own.
Yeah. Oh, man. And I can't tell you, it's not an absolutely necessary component for success, however you define that, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have someone or others believe in you.
Yes.
Because it can pull you up. And I can't tell you how many times, my wife, even today, it's just someone that believes in me, that helps keep me going, that lights the fire in my butt when I want to spend too much time in the garage, unproductively working on my Harley. Right? You know what I mean? It's like, hey, we got manifestation to create. We got some things to do and people to serve, So having someone that you can really make the difference. And even if it's a small one, because Tony was a tough guy, a great bodybuilder in his own right, a great champion in his own right. He owned the gym. He was a success in his own right. And didn't have to say a damn thing. Didn't have to do anything, but he did it in his rough way. Hey, kid, you got potential.
Yep.
I like what you're doing. You're here every day. I like how you're training. You're working hard. And that would be it. It's just a little seed. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then he pointed to, hey, there's a contest coming up for teenagers, in about 2 months or so. About enough time to train. Think about it and walk away. That'd be it. They're like, was like, kid, you could be great. He wasn't Mickey, you know what I mean? He wasn't like, hey, Mickey, I got no lock. Hey, Tony, I got
no lock. Be the greatest of all time.
I'm going to train for a contest. I got no lock, Tony. You know what I mean? But little seeds like that made all the difference. And so the belief system started to change. And I found the courage to do that first competition as a teenager.
Yeah.
And wound up placing third. I look back at the pictures. I'm like, how was I not last? And then I remembered that there were only 3 guys in the contest. So actually, I was last. But it didn't matter. I got third place. I got a trophy. That's all that mattered.
Yeah.
Right? I went home proud and ready for the next one.
Right.
And so the belief system started to change along the way. So I think if I were to encourage anyone in terms of changing belief systems or finding more empowering beliefs or recognizing disempowering beliefs, certainly if you're doing something in your life that is disempowering, if you're drinking too much, if you're doing drugs, if you're in a dead-end job, if you're in a relationship that's disempowering and bringing you down all the time, then you're doing something. Something is causing it, and it's usually a root cause, something deeper inside. It's usually what we find as a limiting belief.
Right. That's been instilled for many, many years, probably.
Absolutely. That's right. In fact, going back to the 4th grade, this is where a lot of those beliefs come from. Early on, that imprinting period.
Right.
We want to believe we create those blueprints, you might say, for how it's done, for how how the world does it, how our parents did it. And so we follow those blueprints, and our unconscious mind thinks this is the reality and how it's supposed to be done. So recognize you're doing something that's far below your potential. And I can tell you this, guys, that your potential is unlimited. You can never, we have no hope ever of really, truly ever understanding our potential, much less achieving it.
Yeah.
But I can tell you
no matter where you are or who you think you are.
It's more than what you're doing right now.
Absolutely.
Steve Jobs' potential ended with his life, but it wasn't done.
Right.
He had a long way to go yet. If he continued to manifest his genius in many respects, others can do the same thing. Absolutely. So wherever you are in your life right now, there's more. And there may be some limiting belief that's keeping you right where you are.
Right.
So the best advice I can give anyone about changing limiting beliefs is get into action.
Yes.
Do something. Make a change. Make a decision.
Yeah.
Make a move in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to be massive. You know, it might start with setting a goal. I mean, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want to have in your life?
Even tuning into content every day. I mean, I read or
Absolutely.
I listen. I'm sure you do too, right? Every day you got to feed your mind with that so that you continue to grow and continue to push forward.
That's critical. And it's so much easier today. You know,
right?
back
Podcast, audiobooks, everything. I mean, there's so much stuff.
I still have somewhere over here. I still have Tony Robbins.
The giant within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were on cassettes.
Yes. I had them on DVDs. I had them on DVDs.
Do you?
Yeah, I still have them.
You talk about, you know, people that believe in you. My mom, early on, when she saw the path I was going down, she saw the infomercial and she sent for the audio thing.
No way.
Yeah. I didn't start listening to them until after I made the decision to walk away from that biker lifestyle. Then it was like, okay, now I'm open and receptive to what this might bring. And it was quite life-changing, honestly. Right. Today, content with great podcasts like yours, with others, there's so many ways to just completely inundate. If you've got a long drive in your car, you should be, you know, I heard this early on, your car should be a mobile university.
Absolutely. Didn't Les Brown say that? Was that Les Brown that said that?
Oh my God. That's one of my favorites.
Yes. Mine too. Too. Yeah.
So yeah. And it's so much. And when you start implanting those positive thoughts, ideas, beliefs from others, you start to recognize that your potential is more. And there's, again, the downside is you can start feeling more down about yourself, that you're not doing something, you're not taking action. But ultimately, it will cultivate into actually taking those actions. The first step is feeling bad or feeling crappy about yourself that you're not doing anything. Good.
Right. That's awareness.
Absolutely.
You got to be aware that you feel crappy. Some people are so numb that they're not even aware that they're, you know, not feeling good or living up to their potential.
No question. And we continue to nullify it with television, with food, with narcotics, with alcohol. I mean, we do all these things to kind of dull the pain.
So true.
And some people, like we said, you know, some people are chronic goal setters that never achieve anything because they nullify the pain just by setting the goal.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful on how the unconscious mind works to keep us off the path to our greatness. You got to always be aware of it, listen for it, watch for it. But I love that you brought that up, because listening to content, viewing content on an endless basis is the way. And never, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. My first Tony Robbins was back in, I was 23 years old. I've been doing it, personal growth and development training, ever since. Been teaching it, been coaching, and still to this day, I can't get enough.
Same, yeah.
Like I said, I just read that book. I've got in my Audible, I've got 24 books waiting to be listened to.
Right.
And I try and take it, and this is a tip too, because again, I have one of my coaching clients is like a chronic listener, and he's good at repeating the information. He's good at information.
Stuck in learning mode?
That's exactly it. I said, how much of that are you actually using? How much? I said, so here's my coaching tool for him. I said, every time you listen to a podcast, every time you listen to a new book, I want you to write down at least two things. Two things, not only that you learn, but you're going to take action on. I'm going to keep you accountable to taking action on those until they become behavioral, until the shift takes place. Because if it's worth listening to, if it's worth repeating, if it's worth pretending you know it, then it's worth doing it. That's the tip also I would give people too. Don't become just a chronic listener.
Yeah.
Now go from one book to the, like a chain smoker, one book to the next. Without embodying some information,
Absolutely. Right? I couldn't agree more. They're definitely, you can get stuck in learning mode for sure.
No question.
And then one thing I wanted to ask about too was, this is such a cool thing that you did. You coached a Special Olympics weightlifting team at one point. And I wondered, did you see limiting beliefs there? with that team, and how is that different compared to your other coaching and clients?
Very good question. And in actuality, it was interesting because I've always been a coach, you know, whether it's with personal training clients, in the fitness realm, or in the personal development, leadership training. I've always been a coach. And in this particular case, I was the assistant coach. And I love that role. The guy who was coaching, this guy Stuart, was absolutely fantastic. And I've never seen anyone better with these athletes and Special Olympic students than he was. And I learned a lot from him. And it was great to be in that subordinate role for change. And so to go back to the subject of limiting.
Now, was this before you had won Mr. America or after?
No, this was after.
After you had, wow, yeah. Okay, very cool.
And I'm trying to remember how I ultimately got involved, because I was doing a lot of work with Special Olympics and special needs back in New York. Mostly I was emceeing events. I was doing those kind of things, but I never did any coaching until here in Colorado. So this was long after I'd won the Mr. in the Olympia and all that stuff.
Okay.
And so I don't remember how I got involved in it, but it was something I was, I will cherish to this day, every day.
Yeah. It's an amazing achievement. Amazing.
It was really, I'm telling you. And you go back to limiting beliefs in terms of how it applies to these Special Olympic athletes. I will tell you this, that it doesn't, it's so fascinating because it doesn't really come into play. Limiting beliefs for these guys, many of them Down syndrome, other challenges. And for me, it was so relatable because I came from that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade until I was taken out of the special ed class. I could relate to that. Those were my peers in many respects,
Yeah. So I found it so interesting that you ended up interweaving that into your life later.
Yeah. And it was,
so cool.
I got to understand it more, and I think it helped that I had that experience going into it.
Absolutely. I think that's why you had that experience.
No question. I think you're right. It provides these opportunities.
Yeah. It was prep work.
I'm telling you, the limiting beliefs just it doesn't come into play with them as much, not as often, a little bit here and there, but really not as much. Those Special Olympic athletes, I'll give you one example. Ed Cardona was one of my favorite athletes, and we actually became very close friends. We did a lot of things. I brought him on stage many times when I was speaking because he was so accomplished. He was a multi-gold medal winner.
Wow.
He had spina bifida. He had all sorts of challenges. Most of the time he was in his wheelchair. When he wasn't, he was walking on his crutches. But the guy could lift. And I remember it was like I could tell him the 300 pounds on the bar. Get over there and let's do that deadlift. Let's do it. He would go over and give it every effort. He was just like, he never said, he would never protest.
No questions asked.
That's 200 pounds more than I've ever done before.
Right.
He didn't say that. He would just go over and give it 100% effort every single time.
Right.
And if he failed, it didn't matter. He still celebrated.
Right.
In fact, that's one of the things I remember the most about Special Olympic athletes. And this is something we can take away from it as far as a lesson, is that they celebrate the victories. They celebrate the failures. They celebrate the effort.
Yeah.
And they don't care. It's just like they would cheer and root on and encourage everyone. It didn't matter what team they were on.
Right.
Didn't matter. My team going against the Longmont team didn't matter. They were screaming, yelling at the top of their lungs for the guy to get the deadlift that was going to beat them.
Egoless.
That's right. They didn't look at it as a success or a failure. They looked at it as fun. Lifting weights, taking on those challenges was something that was fun for them.
Right.
And so they celebrated it every time. Every now and again, you'd have a little breakdown.
Yeah.
Someone would have a berserko, you know what I mean? Exciting,
Yeah.
But that was the lesson I took away from it. Be playful with your achievements.
Right.
And this is something that I borrowed part of our experience lead coaching process from that Special Olympics process, because in the experience coaching process, I teach something about the dragon. And the dragon is basically our inner ego, our identity that wants to keep us right where we are. We talked about this earlier. These limiting, they want to keep us right where we are because it's comfortable, it's familiar, safe. It's where we're supposed to be.
Right.
If I'd allowed that part of me that I call the dragon now to continue to keep hold of me, to keep me in fear, doubt, and uncertainty when I was that biker, I would never be where I am today. I would never be on the podcast today. Now, granted, I might be the president of some outlaw bike club, but I'm not I really wanted,
Podcast from jail.
Or in jail again. Right?
Yeah.
So if I let that dragon keep me where it wanted me to stay, because this is who you are, Tom.
Right.
You're a one percenter. You're an outcast. You're a loser. This is where you belong. If I had continued to believe that, that's where I'd still be today. Right. So one of the things the dragon does, it wants us to take everything deadly serious. The more serious we are about our goals and objectives, the more it becomes alert and defensive and frightened.
Pressure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it becomes frightening.
I get that.
This guy's serious about this. He set this goal to lose weight 10 times already, but this time, holy crap, he's serious.
Right.
So if we take the seriousness out of it and make it fun, make it playful, no matter what it is we're trying to achieve, then, hey, you know what? It's not life or death.
Right.
There's nobody's life in our hands here.
Right.
Not even mine. I just want to achieve something a little bit more. Maybe something a little bit more beyond that. Maybe a little something beyond that. So let's have some fun with it. Let's play with it.
That's not so scary.
Let's celebrate the failure. If we fail, let's say, we found one more way that it's not going to work. Let's move on to the next. And it keeps the dragon at bay. It keeps it off guard, off balance. Yeah. And that's something I learned from those, because those athletes, I'm telling you, Ed Cordova and the rest of those guys, they were able to do lifts and things. I can't even tell you how many times I had tears in my eyes.
I bet.
When someone would fail at a lift that we knew he wasn't going to make, but he would come up and give me an encouraging, like a hug and an I love you, and just like the biggest bear hug you can imagine after failing.
Yeah.
And I said, who the hell am I to be crying, be a baby when I failed just because I lost the Mr. America twice? Am I going to quit?
Right.
Is that it? In fact, that was one of the greatest lessons my mentor, Tony Pandolfo, gave me. My second attempt, the first time competing at the Mr. America, hey, I wanted to compete. I wanted to be in the top 5. I was hoping to be in the top 5 placing out of hundreds of guys. Right. And I was 3rd. But this time there wasn't just 3 guys. This time it was 100.
Oh, come on, Tom.
And the next year I went back, and I'm going there to win now. I was deadly serious. Right. Nothing was going to stop me. And I took 2nd by 1 point. The goal that I had 10 years was so close. And I got beat by 1 point. And I was devastated. I was a wreck. Yeah. I wanted to quit. I didn't go back into the gym. I don't know how long it was. And then Tony Pandolfo actually came to my house. And he said, where have you been? And I said, I'm ready to quit. I said, I don't think I'm going back. And he laughed. He giggled. He goes, it takes no courage to win. He said, it takes courage to lose. He goes, losing, winning, it doesn't really matter. It's all a test, he said. It's a test to see if you're capable of getting yourself back up off the floor and trying again and again and again until you either make it happen or some divine intervention comes in and disrupts the whole process. He said, it takes courage to lose and come back. Yeah. Because it's a test to see if your resolve is strong enough, to see if you're worthy of the title. Yeah. He said, one thing. If you don't go back and compete again next year, if you don't get back in the gym, he goes, we can only conclude that you weren't worthy of the title. And that's why you didn't win it. And holy mackerel, that was a game changer. Yeah. That little speech was a game changer. And that was the most Tony Pandolfo ever said.
That was it. That was all he had to give.
I wish I had recorded it because no one would believe me. But again, it all comes full circle when I look at the efforts of those Special Olympic athletes. Yeah. Make it more fun. And I did the next year. Literally the next day I was back in the gym on a quest to prove to myself the worthiness, but to have some fun. And it was interesting because the guys in New York gyms, and I hate to, sometimes I go off on these bodybuilding stories that are just irrelevant.
Oh, it's great. No, it's good.
So apologies if it is. But I remember the guys in New York, the gyms in New York, everybody was like that. Everybody was deadly serious. They were all like we we will kill anyone who gets on that squat rack in front of me. You know what I mean? And when I started training in California for a short period of time, which I didn't like. It just was a little too plastic for me. But guys in the gyms in California were magnificent. I mean, some of the best physiques, the bodies you've ever seen in your life. I mean, everybody grew up in Gold's Gym.
Yeah.
They were having fun. I mean,
really?
I was dumbfounded. I'm like, these guys are laughing and having fun.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I thought they were at a disadvantage. But I then came to realize that, you know what? It doesn't have to be deadly serious. It doesn't have to be life or death.
Right.
It can be fun. We can achieve what we want and still have some fun along the way.
Right.
Especially Olympic athletes confirmed that for me. So limiting beliefs just didn't come into play for them. It really didn't.
Well, and it's such a great thing for us as spectators of athletes like that, to use that as motivation for ourselves. Like, what excuse do we have?
Yeah, it's true. These guys, I'm telling you, they had some serious challenges.
Yeah.
The psychological, mental, emotional, physical challenges that they just overcome. Someday you should go, if you haven't, go to a Special Olympics competition. Whether it's the weightlifting. Weightlifting is fun because it's acute. It's right there. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But there's skiing, there's cross country, there's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And it is, I'm telling you, you will leave there with a tear in your eye and your heart wide open.
I bet. I mean, I'm actually highly motivated. I follow a lot of mixed martial arts things on Instagram and stuff. And I follow someone that does adaptive mixed martial arts for amputees, for people with mental challenges, you name it, Parkinson's people. And that just absolutely inspires me. You know, that these people can go and against all odds and get out there and try to learn combinations and hit pads and get out there and do something every day. What in the heck is my excuse? I don't feel like going running today. What? I just don't feel like.
I know it can be sometimes frustrating. It can be encouraging.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things that gets us off the couch.
Yes.
Watching others. And again, this is why, I mean, it's unfortunate today that there's so much criticism about the development of wealth and the possession of wealth. Because in my mind, someone who has the wherewithal and the strength of will and the courage to be able to develop a business or take whatever they're doing to the level that creates this level of wealth, what it should be doing is encouraging the rest of us to rise up and do more.
Absolutely.
Right? Watching a martial artist get in there, someone especially with a disability, and overcome that disability and do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so wealth development, wealth creation is no different in many respects.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
When it comes to wealth,
Yep. It's interesting because, when you're putting yourself out there, and I think people don't look at it this way when it comes to business, it's the same kind of thing. You're putting yourself in the arena for everyone to take shots at you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a risky thing when you go out on your own like that.
Yep.
And it's kind of hard to not feel the hits when people come at you. Oh, you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't be doing this, or they're just that way, or, once you've had a little bit of success, you become a target for that kind of, banter. That
kind of ridicule. Absolutely. Yeah. No question. Yeah. And it's a shame because it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
It's going to discourage the next generation, which on the surface doesn't seem to be happening. I mean, a lot this generation does seem to be creating some things and contributing quite a bit. There's a lot of criticism around it, but we don't want that to happen. We don't want that to be that the rest of us leave those who will wind up struggling because we've implanted some kind of limiting belief around that. I mean,
about wealth. Yeah.
I mean, if you believe that people with wealth are bad people in some way, shape, or form, and you're not a bad person, never want to be a bad person, then why would you create wealth?
Right.
That's not even the conscious process. That's the unconscious process.
Right.
You may even want it because you know what? I'd love to have a new car. I'd love to have a new house. I want to give my wife everything she wants. I want to have, but unconsciously, you've got this implanted belief, this blueprint that rich people are bad. And
Right.
and I'll tell you, it is pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you're probably hearing something you've already heard before, but if you look at movies and TV shows, which
Mm-hmm.
probably take anyway, but It's a Wonderful Life, one of my favorite shows. Who
Yeah.
was the bad guy? Who was the
Right.
evil in that movie?
Yeah.
The
It's a
wealthy
story. It's a
Mr. Todd.
story. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a
Who was
story
the
that people buy
evil
right
guy
into.
in The Simpsons? The bad guy was the rich. I mean,
That's true.
it's
That's
every
true.
so it's
Yeah.
constantly being, injected into our consciousness and our unconscious mind.
Yeah.
So we have to, again, listening to content, listening to podcasts, listening to others that have created success, and realizing, hey, these are good people. Many of them are doing this to contribute or contribute to
Absolutely.
the result of it.
There's only so much stuff you can buy,
Yeah.
and you get to a point where you don't want anything else. You want to create, you want to have experiences, you want to provide other people with experience
Mm-hmm.
so that they can, open their minds and benefit from it. It
Absolutely.
becomes more about giving and being fulfilled by giving than it does. Yeah. You see a lot of really wealthy people that, they're not all of them are. I think there's such thing as people who are like insecurely wealthy. So they, they buy the most expensive car, they've got all the jewelry, they've got to, show other people that they're wealthy. But then you have the bulk, like the billionaires who they don't have that stuff because that's not what it's about anymore.
Right.
It may have been the initial thing that lit the fire to be successful.
Right.
But the stuff, you get over that.
As human beings, we just transcend the physical possession. But you have everything you need in terms of your needs, and you've got a nice car and you got a nice home. It's just like, okay,
yeah,
how can we make a contribution? I'm not a huge fan of Bill Gates or his politics, but at the same time, I is a tremendous philanthropist.
Right.
And because he's got everything he needs and then some.
Right.
What?
You don't see him with a rollie.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't seem like the rollie type.
No. Oh, man.
But so, as you talk about that, with wealth and all these things that you've accomplished, like you've accomplished a ton of things. Like you had your own TV show for a while that you were developing with a partner.
I forgot about that almost.
You won Mr. America twice, right? You competed in Mr. Universe. Like you're a high achiever. I would call a very high achiever. How do you stay motivated towards greatness? Once you start having success, I think you probably follow MMA. It sounds like, because we kind of brought that up a few times.
I've studied mixed martial arts for the last. So yeah.
So like Conor McGregor recently, he came back, as they said, and he ended up, winning this last fight and stuff. But his interview, I listened to his interview with Tony Robbins, and he was talking about how, he was his coach's worst nightmare at that point after he had done everything, right? He had achieved
had a big fight, made millions of dollars. Yep.
Yeah. And now he's his coach's worst nightmare because there's no fire. Right. So how do you keep motivated yourself? How do you continue to strive for greatness? What's the fire?
Well, first I would, and again, there's so many people. When I look at some of the great accomplishments, people, we talked about Bill Gates for a moment, Steve Jobs. Look at it historically, Albert Einstein. We look at Winston Churchill, some of the great actors. It just some of the things that people have achieved. I can't even come close to putting myself into the category of a great achiever. I would define myself more as somehow some home on HGTV that's being built in a magnificent surrounding with all the potential in the world. But I'm under construction and in the pursuit of greater achievements. But I could never put myself in the category of those great achievers. Again, people in that flow state and that genius that are able to create and contribute so much to mankind and the world. So it's humbling to even put myself even close to that. So I can't, for the most part.
Right.
But I appreciate you saying it. The way I keep myself motivated to pursue greatness is the pursuit of greatness. I mean, it is that pursuit. It's just like knowing, and it's not something that's like has a possession over me or just like controls me, because believe me, there are many times my wife will tell you where I've got to pick myself up as well, drag myself in from outside the garage.
For sure.
You know, in between achieving something, like when I wrote The 7 Rules of Achievement and it became a bestseller, it was like Conor McGregor. It was like, what? I'm this like kid, stupid kid, kid. I could hardly spell, all that stuff.
Right.
Writing a best-selling book. And
Right.
it was just like, it was cool. It was a great achievement. And it was just like, and it took so long and there was so much work involved that I just took a break. Right. And taking a break sometime, if it's not quickly followed up with what's next, what do we want to achieve? How do we want to serve? How do we take that book and serve others in the process? If that doesn't happen, what happens is, and again, I'm speaking not just for myself, I think, but for a lot of us, we tend to get lazy. We tend to get lethargic.
Right.
We tend to fall back. That's when the dragon starts to reappear. It comes out of its lair. When we're working hard and we're striving, the dragon will show up once in a while and try and derail us.
Right.
But for the most part, it's like, I'm not winning. It goes back into its lair.
Right.
And when we get a little bit lazy, then it starts to pull us back. Those negative thoughts, the limiting beliefs start to show up again. So it's always been really important for me. And this is a lesson from the bodybuilding days, where it's just like, okay, we just finished, we're about to enter a competition that I've been training for 12 weeks or 6 months or so. It's time to start thinking about, even before the accomplishment, whether a success or failure, it's time to start thinking about what's next.
Yeah.
So that we come out
before you're done.
Before.
Mm-hmm.
Before. Because I tell you, that lull, that depression, that, that laziness that happens post goal, whether it's achieved or not, if there's a deadline, you either achieved it or you didn't achieve it at that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens next? You want to continue that momentum.
Right.
It can't be obsessive for the most part, where you're always driven and you never live life.
Right.
But it should always be the next objective. What's next? How do we manifest this? How do we create that?
Right.
And so continuing to stay motivated to achieve greatness, I do it by actually pursuing greatness, by doing something that's always a little bit more stretching the envelope, you might say, you know? And the big motivator today, and again, I'm a big believer that we should all be striving for more.
Mm-hmm.
I think only you, anybody who's listening only you can define what more is for you.
Right. Or greatness.
Or what greatness is.
Yeah.
For me, and again, that evolves.
Right.
For me, at one time, more was winning the Mr. Olympia competition.
Right.
Writing another bestseller. At one time was having the best looking Harley Davidson on the block.
Right.
Whatever it evolves along the way. For me today, more, I think it can almost be summed up in exactly what you and I are doing right now. That if I hadn't achieved whatever I have achieved along the way, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Right.
Some way, I hope, even pray, that in some small way that our conversation has an impact on someone's life. Maybe it's
absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So more for me now, it could be defined as having a greater impact. Have a greater reach, have a greater impact. That doesn't necessarily equate to making more money or selling more products.
Right.
I sell products so I could reach people and change lives.
Right.
Help people transform themselves. I don't do it just to make money. I want to be rewarded for it. We should be rewarded for it.
Yeah.
So more for me, I would define it as exactly what we're doing right now. Having reach, having influence, and hopefully helping people change their lives.
Absolutely. So, and it changes in the seasons of your life, like pursuing greatness. When my kids were little, my pursuing greatness was being a good mom every day.
Yeah. Oh my God. I hate to quote Oprah, but I think that's probably the toughest job in the world.
Yeah.
Great at
it. There's all these things that you're balancing as a mom. You're trying not to lose your shit, so to speak, right? You got laundry, you got all this stuff going on, right? Yeah. And your kids are little and you're really just trying to keep it together. And yet you're supposed to be creating these, absolutely fantastic human beings.
Yes.
And so each day you have a list of things you're doing to kind of achieve that, but there's just the function of life woven in there as well. So at that point in my life, that was greatness to me. I was solely dedicated to that. And as far as you can, Conor McGregor has obviously achieved a greatness, but I was achieving greatness at that time. I was doing that well. And I think that's what everyone needs to realize, that we don't need this huge stage to achieve greatness. We don't have to be on a huge stage to achieve greatness. You can be achieving greatness by being kind on a daily basis, by serving, and providing content for people.
Yeah.
To learn from, that they can put into their life. You don't have to be a huge star to be great.
I agree 100%. In fact, we go back to listening to content again, and the information you'll pick up along the way, listening to good content and taking away those moments, those aha moments from that.
Yeah.
May serve you, but on the other side of the coin, it may serve someone else, someone someone who needs just a little coaching. Not necessarily, hey, here's some advice for you, but maybe some insights that can help shape their life or help them make a decision or help them make a change in some way, shape, or form. And that can easily be defined as being great.
Absolutely. Sharing the conversation, hey, what do you think about this? I was listening to this the other day and this is what this person said. What do you think about that? And just sharing a conversation with someone to try to influence the way they're thinking in a positive way. And then in turn, they influence you with their thoughts. That's greatness too.
Oh yeah.
Driving a conversation, because it's so easy for someone to dump their troubles on each other, right? Misery loves company. Is the old saying, right?
Yes.
So even just being a person that drives the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
thoughtfully and purposefully.
And I love the idea of driving the conversation. And if you're skillful, and it's relatively easy to become skillful at this, is that you can turn a conversation. And what would have ended up as just all negative, hey, you can turn it. You don't have to say, hey, can we talk about something positive for a change?
Yeah. That's the worst. That's like asking a woman, don't overreact.
Right. What's wrong with our conversation? You direct the conversation, and the influence you can have in that respect. Somebody can walk away with a positive feeling instead of feeling more like, everything sucks.
Right.
That's how everyone shares. They love to share misery.
Right. It's a common bond.
When you think about Mother Teresa, she operated in the shadows.
Yes.
Granted, she became someone that became magnificent, no question about it. That wasn't her goal. That wasn't her purpose. No. Her purpose was to serve others and to provide as much comfort and care for others as possible.
That's right.
I mean, that's what you can do in somebody's life, for your own child's life, your husband, your wife.
Absolutely. And that is making huge gains in the world by pouring into someone else, even your family. That's making huge gains in the world. Huge. I love what Mother Teresa obviously is a huge icon, but I loved, and one thing that she has a quote that was out there years ago that I kind of really resonated with me. And she said something like, don't invite me to an anti-war rally, right? Invite me to a peace rally. She doesn't fight against anything.
Right.
It's all about putting light on the positive. And that's such a great way to kind of, goes along with what you had just said. You don't have to be like, hey, let's not be negative here. People right away, like, I'm not being negative. What do you mean?
and again, that's part of the ego. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to interrupt this. I'm going to show you, you're all being negative. We shouldn't be negative. That's part of the ego. This is an easy way to do it. You can, again, operating in the shadows, operating in the lurches. No one has to know you're great to be great. In other words.
That's right.
You can be great. You can feel an intrinsic value and an intrinsic motivation and an intrinsic feeling of, I'm doing something that means something, that's contributing something, without it being completely ego driven. And it doesn't have to. And shedding light, like you said. And I hate to be cliche, but the only way to combat the darkness, and there's a lot of darkness out there,
Yep.
to be light. So be
Yep.
the light at any given moment when you see it necessary.
Yeah.
You see it an opportunity for it. And that's greatness. You can't ask for better than that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers on your podcast. Doesn't matter.
Right.
You know?
No,
Nice.
it's like one person
Yep.
that gets something out of it. And
Absolutely.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You talk about things, when they suck, when things suck, you talk about that and how you kind of pull yourself out of that. And I think we hit the nail on the head when we were just having this conversation, because pouring yourself into someone else or being, a encourager of someone else, that's huge. Just when you're not doing well and things are sucking for you, if you just make it a point to encourage someone else every day, it brings light into your life.
I agree 100%. No question about it. In fact, that's one of the ways for me, one of the things that has a profound impact on keeping me positive most of the time. Talk about, and I know you interviewed my very dear friend, and we are very dear friend, James Rouse, Dr. James Rouse.
Yes.
And he is one of the most positive people.
Oh my gosh. It doesn't get any more positive than James Rouse.
He truly is like one of the most upbeat. I've seen him down here and there. We've had lots of meetings where we talk about business opportunities and we talk about building some things together and stuff. And there's some times where he'll share some frustration, but it's never in a downtrodden way where it's like, that's it, it's all over,
Right.
More positive people in the world. And here's a guy, again, we could take a lesson from, who's always sharing, always encouraging, always motivating other people.
Yes.
Let's go to the opposite extreme, someone who's really, truly, deeply depressed, unless, of course, and it could be the chicken or the egg when we talk about chemically induced depression.
Yeah.
Chemically induced depression could easily be a manifestation of focus. When we're focused exclusively on ourselves and what we don't have and how dark and ugly the world is and our lives are miserable, we can easily influence the chemistry of our own body that manifests into something that more measurable as chemically induced, but it may not. And so that's the opposite end of the spectrum. We talk about James Rouse on one end of the spectrum, who's constantly pumping himself with endorphins because he's always reaching out, always helping others, always encouraging others. If he sees a post that even sounds a little remotely not positive for me, he's on the phone. He's calling me. He's dropping me a note. Something. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? I love that. So the opposite end of that spectrum is depression, where we're focused exclusively on ourselves.
Right.
And the best way out of that, again, from one end of the spectrum, is certainly, variables along the way, but one end of that spectrum is to start focusing on someone else, to encourage someone else.
Yeah.
There's always someone in a worse position than you. There's always someone suffering.
Yes.
And the more we focus on ourselves and allow ourselves to be taken in by the darkness, the more suffering we create in the world, the more we encourage it in the world.
Yeah.
We have to find a way to the light and be that light and to share that light with others along the way.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Podcasts like yours are so important,
Yeah.
And it's critical. I mean, that's what I do. I try anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do a great job of that with all the content you're putting out there. I see a common thread, and I've seen it in other people that I have, read their biographies and studied and listened to their work and stuff. And it's you pulled yourself out of the darkness when you were in a bad place, in your early 20s, because of other people. And again, you can rely on that to pull yourself out. If you can't have enough, respect or love for yourself to do things for yourself, or if you think you don't deserve it, rely on the people that you love, because they do, right? You have the belief that they do deserve it.
Yeah.
So do it for them until you can do it for yourself.
Absolutely. Yep. Do, then believe. Then you'll start to believe in yourself and that your worthiness along the way, but if you believe in others, and that's just it, never giving up on the world, never giving up on people. When we start to become cynical, I have a very dear friend who's a police officer, a former police officer. He's left the force, and he became very cynical.
I could imagine.
Very dark.
Yeah.
Because he started to really believe that all people, except for a very few, close friends, were just miserable bastards and not worthy of anything. I mean, because he was surrounded by it every day.
Right.
The lesson in that, again, we talk about one end of the spectrum and another, is if that's one end of the spectrum where you're constantly surrounded by what you would consider the trash of life, people have very little hope, and no one is truly trash. We just invest into that. And you start to believe that about the world, it's going to show up in everything you do, everything you say, your relationships and your job. And ultimately it's going to infect it to a degree where it's going to take you down, On the other end of that spectrum, surrounding yourself with positive people you care about.
Yes.
People that care about you. And sometimes that's not easy depending on your circumstances.
Right.
But if it's not easy or not possible due to your circumstances, then this is where we talk about that leap of faith. Then it's mandatory to change your circumstances. And sometimes that's the only thing you can do, is change your circumstances, and then you'll start to change that belief system. But if you're surrounded by negativity and bad people and people that don't encourage you, you need to find some new friends.
Absolutely.
They say that our level of wealth, that matter,
Yep,
will be determined by around, the people we're surrounding ourselves with, their level. And it's the same thing for our emotional wealth and our emotional well-being, our physical. If we surround ourselves by people who exercise and are fit all the time, it's hard not to be pulled in by this.
Right? You're getting a little tired of sucking your gut in the whole time.
Absolutely. Because everybody likes stuff. This is a funny story about my brother. After I pulled myself out of that whole biker scene, my brother was still deeply entrenched. In fact, it was one of the most painful experiences watching my brother now, because I was able to take a step back.
Right.
And watch from a distance, or observe from a distance, what it was that I was fully immersed in not long before. Right. And there was my brother still fully immersed in it.
Oh my gosh.
And drinking too much, and carrying a big Bowie knife everywhere he went, and just like fully immersed. And it was very painful. And
I bet.
And I remember, and then I opened my first gym in Long Island, and it was a tremendous success. And we were going to open up a second one. And I asked Mike, I said, listen, I really would love for you to be my partner on this thing. I want you to come in on this, Yeah. And I know you'd do a great job, and you'd be part of this thing, and help you out of this lifestyle. And at first he was very resistant. And it was just around that same time that I was going to Miami to compete in the third national championship in the Mr. America title after two failed attempts.
Right.
So he went with me, along with, I had a really fun, great entourage. Talking about surrounding yourself with encouraging, helpful people. I had a great entourage of friends and supporters, And so we all went down there, and I'll never forget, because after I won, I had another friend who was a very dear friend who won his category, his weight class, and another friend who took second. And so here we are at the Fontainebleau Hotel with the entourage. And I'm right out of winning the national championship, ripped to the bone, tan to the max. And my buddies are like looking great. And there's my brother. With the belly out, smoking his cigarette, pale as a ghost. And I'll never forget, he saw pictures of it. That's it, man.
Right.
He was done.
Yeah.
He saw pictures of himself surrounded by guys that were like all the fitness. Was like, that's it. He goes, I'll take you up on it. Let's go into partnership. Let's do this gym together.
Wow.
And man, it was unbelievable. We encouraged him, and all of a sudden it was just like he started training, and within a year he entered his first contest and won. He won another contest and was well on his way to replicating my success in the bodybuilding world. Then he got married, had a kid, and that was all that. That was the end of that.
Yeah.
But he was a tremendous partner in both our athletic clubs. And, and all because of, well, in many respects, because of some encouragement, surrounded by people that were positive. Immersion. Absolutely. Getting away from, even for a little while, all that negativity that he was surrounded by, and getting immersed into this process. It changed the belief system. It changed what he had to do. And then seeing himself in those pictures was such a shocker. I was like, that's it. I got to change. I have to change.
That's an awesome story.
Don't know where it comes from.
I'm sure he'll love that you told it on here too.
Yeah, I'm sure, well, no question. Tremendous success today, by the way.
Yeah.
Incredible artist. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really awesome.
I don't know how I got off on that tangent. My apologies.
No, that's a great tangent. Such a powerful story, because that is what it takes. You've got to get yourself around people that are going to support you and that, you know, you can look up to and think, yeah, okay, I can do this because they're doing it.
I mean, it's the old adage, if they can do it, so can I.
Absolutely.
If someone can do it, you can do it too.
Yes.
No question.
So let's switch a little bit and talk about confidence then. Because how do you get to the level, you know, like what, because wow, you know, your brother's, like you said, overweight, smoking cigarettes. I'd be a little nervous going into a gym with you guys. You know, how's he gonna, like, how do you get the confidence up to be like, screw all that. I know I'm not where I want to be right now, but I'm never going to be where I want to be if I don't get over this hump.
Well, I got to be honest, that's one of the reasons I admire, because I still more or less live in the gym. I love the gym. It's what I do. All my coaching processes, the Experience the Leap process, our Max Mind coaching, everything, I don't want to say revolves around, but certainly includes physical fitness, because I'm a big believer, like you said, it's difficult to be your best. It's difficult to be confident when you're not confident, not only in how you look, your appearance, but also in what I categorize as body rapport. And body rapport is to know, like, and trust your body. If you're going to take that leap of faith, if you're going to move on to something else, you got to trust your body to be able to carry you forward. There's a great story about one of my clients and a dear friend. She's featured in one of our products, Max Mind Lean Body. Her name is Rebecca. And when she first got divorced, she left the house, walked out. She was 260 pounds, had to get a job, working in a used car lot. And she said that first day it was 90 degrees out, back and forth in that parking lot. She didn't know if she was going to make it. Her body was collapsing, 260 pounds, dragging herself across that heat.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Know how she was physically going to be able to do it.
Right.
So how do you do it? How do you move forward? How do you find a way to manifest your magnificence if you're not manifesting it physically? If you don't have the energy, you don't trust your body along the way to be able to do that. So that's a big part of it. So certainly being fit is part of it. But there are three things. The reason I brought that up is because I admire so much. And if you're overweight and you're struggling with that and you don't want to get into the gym because it feels like an intimidating environment, it feels like you don't have the confidence to get in there, I'm telling you something. It doesn't matter who you are, how fit you are. If you're in that gym and you see someone who's overweight and struggling, it is one of the most admirable things you'll ever see in your life. It is just because we know how difficult it is. It's a challenge. You know? So to see someone who needs to lose 100 pounds or more in there, trying, making the effort, not only did they set the goal for themselves, not only did they take the action and join the gym, but they're here doing it.
Right.
And they have a much greater level, a potential for success as a result of just taking that action, you know?
Yeah.
So I admire that tremendously.
Yeah.
But to go back to your question, how do you get that confidence? How do you develop it? And certainly confidence doesn't develop overnight. It's a process.
Right.
Along the way. But I have three categories I think that are pretty important that for me ultimately manifest into increased, whether exponentially or small incremental increases in confidence. But if you have these three things, your confidence will start to go up. One is alignment. The second is preparation. And the third is action. We've talked about action. We'll talk about it a little bit more. But alignment is one of the keys, at least for me.
Okay.
Anything that I want to achieve that requires confidence moving forward. It required confidence in writing a best-selling book. It required confidence in winning Mr. America.
Yeah.
Doing the TV show, which I did for 16 years, requires I'll tell you something. Again, just a quick anecdote. That first time I did an interview on that television show, called Muscle Sport U.S.A., and we went to all the big contests around the country, and we were interviewing. No one was doing these interviewing bodybuilders and going to these events, right? We were the only one. And the first time I had to do an interview, it was the most painful experience I've ever had. I was dripping sweat. It was pouring down my back. And I'm like, it's just some bodybuilder, and I'm just asking a question. And I couldn't even think of questions to ask. I was like, So what got you into bodybuilding? And I turned to my
Meanwhile,
boss.
you had competed in all these things and like put
brutal.
yourself.
It was brutal. And then after a while, I got very confident with it, got very good. Fox Sports Net picked us up.
Yeah.
I started wearing the suit and tie and wearing the Fox Sports, mic and everything. And it was just like, I had to be pro.
Yeah.
But thank God for about a year or so of doing it poorly,
right,
that I was finally ready when Fox Sports presented it.
Yeah.
Said, hey, we want to pick you guys up for 3 seasons,
Yeah.
And so I was ready. But
Right.
man, it was really, I was like, oh my God. So to go back to my point, which is alignment, preparation, and action. So for anything that I want to achieve, and I recommend this for everyone else, is that understand what your values are and understand that whatever you're trying to achieve must be in line with your values hierarchy. If it's in line with your values hierarchy, you're going to feel much more confident. It's going to give you firm ground to be grounded, to stand on. If it's not in line with your values, or you're not sure what your values are, if you're compromising your values along the way, then what's going to happen is it's going to feel a little like you're standing on quicksand and sinking. And your confidence is going to diminish along the way.
Right.
So get clear. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to be clear. And as coaches, one of the things that we do what's called a values elicitation. Where when I work with anyone, whether it's a business owner, an athlete, politician, I want to be clear. More importantly, I want them to be clear on exactly what their values are. So we elicit it. I don't just ask, hey, what's important to you? There's a process to it. But you can just ask yourself, what's really important to you? And if you can come up with 10 things, freedom, God, family, adventure, whatever it might be for you, what's really important to you that you would be willing to sacrifice this or this or this or this to be able to have that in your life, to be able to experience that life. Then if it's in line, whatever your objective might be that could rattle your confidence otherwise, if it's in line with that, you're going to feel more solid. You're going to feel more confidence. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so
totally.
That's the first thing. And the second one, of course, is, action.
Yeah.
Taking action. But before that even, I should say, is preparation. If you're prepared, if you're fully prepared, and listen, it doesn't matter if you're, asking someone for their hand in marriage, you're doing your first podcast, or standing on stage in a micro Speedo bikini.
It's a test.
You're not prepared. And I'll tell you, I have stood on stage unprepared. I've stood on stage where I didn't diet hard enough. My tan wasn't right. I didn't really put the work into it. And I thought I was ready, but I wasn't prepared. And I knew at the moment I stepped on that stage, I was not prepared, and nothing destroys your confidence quite like that. And not prepared. You go into a meeting unprepared, you go into your first podcast, you prepared very, very well for this podcast, for this interview.
Thank you.
Very well. And your confidence showed it. It's just something that so preparation is key.
Right.
So whatever it might be, take the time to prepare for what you want to start a business. Don't just start a business tomorrow. Prepare.
Yes.
Do your homework. Your confidence will increase along the I had no idea what a balance sheet was before. Now I know. You think that would increase your confidence opening starting your first business? Holy crap, yeah.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
But I think you get more confident in asking.
Absolutely. You just do.
You don't have any qualms about like, hey, I don't know what that is. What is that?
Yeah. I recently bought a new car, and it was a hell of an experience because I didn't just normally my normal process, like most people, is just go to a car. I had interest in a certain type of car.
Right. Sure.
Go to the car dealership. You find one. It may not be exactly the color you want, but it's close. And you take it for a test drive. You like it, you buy it, right?
Right.
You buy it. For me, I was going to shop online because now you got Carvana, you got TrueCar, you got Car Gurus, you got all these.
I know.
So you got a selection of all these places around the country, you know?
Deliver them to you.
The process I had cars delivered. But the process
Nice.
much more complicated than you might think, right?
Yeah.
So what I did was, and I knew this was going to happen. So what I did was I started looking at cars I really wasn't that interested in. And I started to learn what the process was. I'm like, oh, okay. Can I negotiate? I started with a car I wasn't really that interested in. And And I'm like, can I negotiate with these people? And I said, okay, you're looking for 45, but it's not really the color. I'll tell you what, I'm not really interested in spending more than $35,000. This is my limit. Can I do that?
Yeah.
So I learned along the way that I can negotiate.
Right.
Or I can get a better deal. I can get an extended warranty. Or like, these are things I had no idea. If I had the car gurus and said, oh, there's the car I want, let me call the first dealer and just buy the car, I would have missed out on a tremendous deal. I wouldn't have got the warranty I wanted. I wouldn't have got the new tire. There was other things along the way.
Right.
So I learned along the way and increased my confidence when it got down to what I really wanted.
Right, because you knew what you could get.
Absolutely. So it was all about the preparation.
Right.
And of course, so alignment, preparation, and then ultimately action. And there's nothing like action. And again, a quick story about one of my clients who's a doctor, tremendously confident in what she does as a doctor, but terrible at business, has no confidence in herself when it comes to making any business or career decisions.
Right.
But she knew she had to make this particular career decision and vacillated on it. Finally, I got her to work through it. We talked through it. We went through an entire process around it. She made the decision. That's it. She felt good about it. Now she had to let her supervisor know. Again, weeks of vacillating. By vacillating,
she's sweating.
She started getting more confident. Her confidence kept going down and down and down. And she started questioning her decision. Maybe it wasn't the right decision. Maybe I shouldn't do that.
Right.
So again, we went through the process and we got her to deliver the email to her supervisor. And in her own words, she said, that was fucking awesome. I have never felt so empowered.
Yes.
In my life. And as a result,
I love it.
Of taking her confidence skyrocketed. It was unbelievable. Right. She was like almost cocky. I gotta be honest. She was almost cocky after that. So taking even a small action on something you've been vacillating over, you're indecisive about, can increase your confidence. So if you take small little action steps after preparation, and after making sure it's in alignment with your higher values, taking those little small actions will increase your confidence along the way. Now, there's other things you can do. Mm-hmm. I wrote an entire program. I have what I consider one of the best confidence building programs out there, because there's other small things you can do. Right. If you want more about that, you can go to the Inner Game of Confidence.
Yeah, that was your second book.
The Inner Game, because it's really all. Yeah, that was one of my books. Yeah. And we tried to do an audio program. It's a 6 audio program, and I think it's one of the best out there. And so there's other things you can do, but those things are first and foremost: alignment, preparation, and action will increase your confidence. You'll feel on solid ground and be able to do anything. You'll be able to take ultimately the world by the balls.
Nice. And so how did this process that you went through with the doctor, did you work with her on the SMART goals? And I know that your third book is called, Why Smart Goals Are Dumb?
Why Smart Goals may be dumb. Yes. I didn't want to be definitive because listen, they can be very powerful. In fact, SMART goals are the gold standard for goal setting today.
Right. And so those of who are listening who don't know what SMART goals are, it's an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic and timely.
Timely. That's right. Yes. Yep. And again, like I said, it is, we understand, you and I certainly understand, and I believe probably everyone listening, or they wouldn't be listening, understands that setting goals is really the first action step in achieving anything and creating any kind of change for the most part. If there's an idea.
Do you think awareness comes first?
Awareness, yeah. I mean, we talked about awareness earlier. Yeah. It's so important, right? Yeah. I mean, but awareness can become also sort of like a dream. I dream about, it's like, I would love to, this would be great.
Some desire.
So what turns a dream or a desire into a goal is just a process of actually establishing, defining, and setting that as a goal, right?
Right.
And SMART has been the gold standard for the last
Yeah, I think
20,
100
25
years.
years or so. Yeah, yeah, and it's been used for years. But I really believe, for me, and not for everyone, it can be a very powerful process, and certainly better than nothing. It's better than just, I want to be rich. That could be considered a goal, but it's not really an empowering internal directive to get you there, right?
Right.
So I believe the SMART goal is better than no goal setting process at all. But I believe it falls short in a couple of areas. One, actually it's two areas specifically. One, it doesn't address organic, or what I call natural, right? And again, in line with your values. It doesn't address the importance of that. So that's one of the areas where I feel it might be dumb.
Okay.
Second is, and by the way, keep in mind that I use it might be dumb, SMART goals might be dumb, to be dramatic.
Of course. It got my attention.
And there you go. And the second is passion.
Yeah.
We know that passion is extremely important, and it doesn't really address the importance of passion in achieving our objective. And so organic is, again, going back to your values. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to understand. I would never have anyone that I coach just to tell me what their goals are. I might get some idea. I might want them to tell me about it, but not, okay, great, that's what we're going to pursue, without first really understanding what their values are in life, because it's so important, keeping that in alignment, making it organic, making it natural for you.
Right.
And that natural process of whatever it is you want to achieve, again, keep in mind it evolves. What was natural for me 20 years ago, maybe something that, hey, you know what, I'm no longer in line with my values today.
It's a different season.
What's natural today may not be in line 20 years from now. I don't know,
Right.
So you have to look at where you are right now and make sure the goal and objective is natural. One of the ways that people fail in achieving their goals, whether they utilize the SMART goals process or not, is that it winds up that it wasn't natural. And so because it's not organic, it creates internal conflict and resistance, right? I want to be rich, but rich people are bad. It creates resistance.
Yes.
No matter how clearly you define that objective, every time, and this is a way, by the way, to recognize if you're pursuing something that's inorganic for you, is every time you think about it, what's the feeling? You get something in the gut that sends a message up through the vagus nerve to the brain that creates a heat that's
tension,
sort of like tension, that feeling, that little stress feeling, that resistance is a little internal resistance, or you feel a sense of joy and happiness, you feel some excitement around it, So if you feel that little bit of stress, a little bit of doubt, like it doesn't feel right, then you know it's not organic. One of two things have to happen. You either have to change the goal, redefine it, or you have to investigate and go deeper in terms of what is the resistance? Why do I have that resistance? Is that whatever the belief around wealth or losing weight or whatever it might be that you want to do, where does that resistance come from? What's the limiting belief around that? And then we got to work on changing that.
Right.
Because if the goal is important to you enough, then maybe it's worth pursuing. But you better change the internal belief and change the hierarchy of your values in order to be in alignment with it. Right?
And then you'll be happier too.
You'll be much happier in the pursuit of it.
Yeah.
If you're pursuing something that's inorganic for you,
right,
it's like being weighed down with a bunch of pesticides and preservatives.
Yeah.
It's organic. You don't want that.
No.
So that's part of it. And then the passion part, of course.
Right.
Because we know that if you're not really, really jazzed up and passionate about your objective, your goal, or you're doing it because it's kind of like, my parents always thought I should be a doctor or an attorney, or, it's just sort of like, hey, listen, I have to be honest, my first marriage, it felt like it was my girlfriend in high school, and it felt like it was the natural thing. And it was like the progression, and it was what we're supposed to do now, but it wasn't organic. It wasn't natural. And I wasn't passionate about it. And so it didn't last. It didn't survive. So goals are much the same way. If we don't have passion about them, and sometimes, listen, all the strategies, all the techniques, all the mapping out of plans, when those things go awry, which they they often do.
Yeah.
Passion may be the only thing that gets us to our goal and objective. Maybe the only thing that sustains us.
Right.
So if we don't have that, and SMART goals doesn't address the passion component of it, then we're going to fail along the way. So for me, that's one of the reasons why I wrote that book, Why SMART Goals May Be Dumb. And in that program, in that book, and in another program that I've created called Goal Juice, GOAL, juice.com, I have another process that I created several years ago and I've used all the time, and a lot of coaches are now using it, adapted it, called the Action Goals Criteria. And the Action Goals Criteria stands for accessible, clear, and concise, towards them timed, right? Impassioned, organic, and if now. So it's got the criteria, but it's got those two other elements into
it. Yeah.
Organic, if now.
Yeah.
Or organic and impassioned. So when you implant that, when you take your goal, your written goal strategy, and you put it through that criteria, is it impassioned? I'm not hearing it. The language could be up, or I'm not feeling it. Well, let's rethink it again, you know?
Right.
Is it organic? Is it in line with my values? Well, maybe not. Maybe it is. Maybe yes, I feel it. It's good. It feels natural for me. Is it written in the as if now, as if it's already happened? So the criteria is the guiding process, like SMART goals, for reestablishing your goal. So what I do in the Action Goals Criteria and in the Goal Juice program is I take people, I literally walk them through that process to create what we call the action goals or outcome achievement statement.
Nice. So it sums it all
up. As opposed to a goal. Absolutely. And it becomes more of a proclamation.
Mission statement?
Declaration. Yeah, it's like a mission statement almost, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
The only difference between that and a mission is the as if now. It's stated in present tense.
So powerful.
Instead of here's our mission, here's what we're going to achieve, here's what we're striving for. It is written in because this is how the human mind works. Our brain works. If something's in future tense, we tend to, okay, that's great. That sounds fantastic. Good. We'll achieve that. That sounds good. Now, what's important right now in this moment? And that's what we focus on. So we create an outcome achievement statement that's in the now. It programs the brain to work on it right now. Everything we look at, everything we see, everything we do programs our internal navigation system and the reticular activating system to move towards it right now as if we've already achieved it. And now we have to accomplish it to make it congruent, you know?
With our belief system.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the process. So you asked the question, and again, dramatic, you know, why SMART goals may be dumb. Yeah. They may not be completely idiotic.
Right.
But I don't believe they're as complete.
Right.
In the process. And sometimes people fail using the SMART goals process and wonder why.
They're missing those components.
That's right. This may be the very reason why. So that's why
I love that. I love that.
Hey, if you'd like if your listeners and yourself would like a copy, I'd love to give you a free copy, a digital copy of Why SMART Goals Can Be Done.
Yeah. We'll put that in the show notes.
Absolutely. Would you do that? That'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. So they can get a hold of that. That's a very nice offer that you're making.
Perfect. You got it. So I'll get you that link, and you guys can download it anytime. If you want to go to the program, it's a fantastic program. GoalJuice.com. The juice of life, man. Let's go after it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's very helpful because I think people, they don't know where to start, you know, and sometimes I think this is a great point to talk about as well, is that people don't know what they want, and that you don't have to know what you want to get started.
Yeah.
Like your physical health is a great place to start.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd be in trouble if I didn't ask you a little bit about fitness, obviously. You've achieved this great fitness career, owner of multiple gyms, Mr. America twice, you competed in Mr. Universe. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now for your fitness and your diet and why you're doing that?
Okay, absolutely. My fitness regimen right now, I train 3 days a week, strength training.
Okay.
I'm a big believer and always will be. I was indoctrinated early, but everything, all the anecdotal, all the scientific evidence is leading towards strength training as probably the most important. We can do yoga.
Yeah.
agile. I believe in it.
Yeah.
I believe in Pilates. I believe in CrossFit training. But strength training is becoming increasingly the form of exercise that creates longevity, skeletal health, muscular strength, muscular endurance, even mental strength along the way, cardiovascular. And it all depends on how you do it, of course, the routine, the program, and your process, your level of intensity. But so I train 3 days a week strength training. I still have a training partner who, I swear to God, to this day is still hell bent on killing me in there. And I think that's his you know.
Sounds like a great training partner.
But it's fun. And I once put a little banner of Dawn and I training together, and I said, find someone who wants to try and kill you and hire them as a trainer. I didn't hire this guy, but at the same time, I think that's the case. So we train really hard together, and I've had my share of injuries here and there.
Right.
But most of those injuries over the years haven't come from the strength training. They've come from my martial arts training, which I do twice a week. Okay. And it's all mixed martial arts stuff. And it gets relatively intense. And I had a torn rotator cuff it was actually 2 years ago now. And it was because I was training at a new dojo with a bunch of new guys, and they were all very intense and young guys. I'm 60. These guys are all in their 20s, you know what I mean? And I'm going at it, and tore the rotator cuff along the way. So all my injuries have come from that, but I love it. I embrace it. I think it keeps me mentally sharp. It keeps me focused because I'm always learning something new.
Yeah.
It's a mind, body, chore, you know?
Yep.
And it's where I get my cardiovascular workouts from as well. So I don't spend much time on the treadmill or bike or anything like that. My wife loves to be on the treadmill. She uses her, her monitor, and is always getting her steps in and pushing the envelope a little bit there. For me, it's not my thing, Right. So that's what I'm trying to do. About 5 days a week of training.
Nice.
And plenty of rest. I really focus on. It gets increasingly difficult to sleep. When you're always pursuing some objective, it's the mind going. I mean, I'm here in Colorado. I'll use a little CBD once in a while for that. Trying to get better early so I can get at least 8 hours. That's so critical, I think,
Yeah, more and more sleep is really coming to the forefront as far as health.
And I think, we become more and more aware of it, the more difficult. For some reason, it's even with rituals before bed, like shutting off the screen.
Right.
Packing it early, doing a little meditation, it still can be a challenge.
Yeah. To shut things down.
Because I'm up 3 times a night going to the bathroom. It's a little challenging, man. The older you get, you got to deal with these things.
Right.
Right. The older I get, the more things I got to give up. As far as diet and nutrition, I've always eaten really clean. Bodybuilding taught me really clean and healthy. I used to be a junk food addict when I was a biker. I was eating candy and crap and drinking alcohol and all that stuff, and then quickly dropped that and began to realize it's all poison. It's poison for the body.
Yeah.
Not that I don't indulge in it anymore. I mean, I'll have an occasional greasy burger and some French fries, and we'll order pizza here and there and do a stuff. But you have to enjoy those things. They're tasty,
Right.
But you can't sustain on it.
Right.
One of the more radical things I've done with my nutrition plan over the last few years is gone grain-free. After reading The Grain Brain and the Wheat Belly Diet, I've become convinced, and it was on top of my wife and I were asked a couple of years ago to do a photo shoot for Iron Man and Muscle Fitness magazine. Nice. And so really, we're always in decent shape, but not magazine shape. Right. Believe it or not, guys, those guys, those fitness models aren't always in that shape.
Right.
So we spent a couple of months, and one of the ways I was able to lean out and start to feel more energized for the process was cutting all the wheat, because I was a wheat junkie. I was just a grain junkie. I would have a bowl of oatmeal, about 6 or 7 ounces of oatmeal in the morning.
Right.
I would have somewhere during the day, I would have at least 6 slices of bread, usually wheat or whole grain bread of some kind.
Wow.
And then granola before bed. And so I was like a wheat junkie. I mean, I had, this is what I was eating. And so when I cut that out for training for the photo shoot, not only did I start to lean out faster, but my blood sugar felt more stable. I had less headaches.
Yeah.
I felt more energized. I just felt less bloated. I mean, all these things that was like, that I was starting to believe were just symptoms of getting older. Or who I was. It was just like, part of the process, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
As I cut those out, I started to feel better. And I got much leaner, because you can imagine, think about all those carbohydrates.
Yeah. That's a lot of carbohydrates, 6 pieces of bread. Yeah.
But then after the photo shoot, I went back to eating a lot more of those grains again. Then I read those 2 books and began to realize, hey, you know what?
There's a correlation here.
There is some evidence here, and even cognitive decline, there's a relationship there. The gluten notwithstanding, which we know today for a lot of people is a real issue.
Right.
Gluten may or may not have been an issue for me. I'm certainly not celiac or anything of that nature.
Right.
But again, it may be having, you know, one of the things they talked about is this cognitive decline that we don't realize. We don't know the inflammation taking place in the brain. We understand the gut, in the muscular system, in the joints, in the form of arthritis. We recognize in the vascular system, but we don't know. There's no way of measuring or feeling it in the brain. And they believe now that a lot of these grains and gluten are contributing to inflammation in the brain that may be causing cognitive decline and even possibly, you know, Alzheimer's. So do I want to risk that at this point just for a delicious bread jelly sandwich? Maybe, but not really, you know?
Yeah, and not every day.
No. So I decided pretty much to cut all those wheat again. The calories went down. I make up the difference with healthier fats, a lot more fats. You know, I eat a lot more olive oil, avocados, more nuts, things of that nature. I eat a lot of eggs. And I'm also a big believer that we need saturated fats. We need cholesterol for our hormones and for our brain health.
Yeah.
Red meat. I eat
the 80s really did a number on a lot of people.
Didn't it? I mean, Vince, again, talk about what limiting beliefs, you know, even
the fat makes you fat.
The Framingham heart study had us all believing that those things were killing us.
Yes.
You know? It started to change. Eggs, I eat a ton of eggs. I eat at least 6 eggs a day.
Yeah,
you know,
we eat a ton of eggs too here in our family. Yeah, tons.
Great source of protein, convenient as hell.
Yes. Quick.
Yeah, and quick. So this is how I eat today. I just consider it clean. It's not paleo. It's not keto. It's just really clean.
Yeah.
And that's for the most part where I start the process for most of my clients, and with our Max Mind Lean Body program. It's clean eating. If someone wants to make a shift, or if we find out we're using DNA a little bit more and getting involved more in that testing process.
I just gave a spit test. I just gave a spit test. I have to wait 6 weeks. I'm going to find out what I'm supposed to be eating after all these years. I probably should have known that a long time ago.
But it's so much easier. It's going to be so much easier because you eat clean. You eat healthy.
Yes.
For the most part. I mean,
totally. Yeah.
It's so much easier once you learn that it's like, okay, I'll miss this, but I can make this adjustment or this adjustment based on the results of your testing.
Yeah. And I'm really excited about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is what my wife is doing right now. I mean, she's doing all the DNA stuff and working with this and testing and working with peptides and the whole epigenetic.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
It's really, it's so cool right now what we can do.
It is.
I look forward to hearing about how your results came.
Yeah. I'm going to post about them and kind of follow the process here. So I did a little video the other day spitting. And then doing the test, and now I'm just kind of waiting. But I think it's great knowledge for people that you can get this stuff done for, you know, it's not crazy expensive anymore.
No, it's starting to become much more affordable. And there are stations and stuff, you know, that you don't have to go through, you know, 23andMe and all this stuff where it's all out there and who knows where.
Right.
You know what I mean? Plus you're really not getting the nutritional profiles that you would get.
No, this is definitely nutritionally based. Like that's what it is for. They're not going to link me up to a tree of ancestry or whatever.
Right. Yep. I know my ancestors are all dirtbag. I don't need to know anymore. Wonderful people. Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm not even going to comment on that. So talking about, the advancements in health and stuff like that, there's a lot of things going on, obviously, in our society these days. And we touched on a little bit with, kids coming up and values and stuff like that. But there's one thing that kind of concerns me I have a daughter and I have a son. But there is a bit of a culture shift I've been able to identify over the last few years. And that is, I feel like masculinity is kind of under attack. I feel like that.
Yeah.
And I don't feel good about that.
Wow.
And you are in kind of a world of masculinity, being in bodybuilding and whatnot. And I kind of wondered, what is your take on that? Are you seeing a culture shift in that? And what are your feelings about it? And how do you think where is it going?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%. I'm actually glad to hear you say it. As a woman, coming from a woman's perspective, I think it's important for so many women to still understand what's happening with their men, what's happening with guys out there.
Yeah.
Definitely a culture shift taking place. There's no question about it. And not to get in any way, shape, or form political, but I mean, when we talk about gender identification, and this is all a part of it. It's a symptom of what's taking place in terms of the emasculating of America today, for the most part.
Yeah.
And there may be some good aspects to this, some good components to it.
For sure.
But for the most part, it becomes it's a shift to the unnatural order of things. And when I say the order of things, I don't mean masculine dominance over women by any means. In fact, one of the things that comes from this is that an equality, without question.
We're better together.
No doubt about it. Let me rephrase that. I am a third of what I am alone with my wife.
Right.
A third. I'm not even half of what I am. I'm a third.
Right.
So, but it's so important to recognize that, and that's one of the things that we have to continue to move towards.
Yes.
Equality in many respects,
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean. So here's what I think is happening in many respects. It's sort of like there's been this inequality. Men are dominant, men are men, and women are women. They're here, and this is sort of like in our society, it's been like this. So now, instead of saying, "Hey, let's continue to make sure we bring with some effort," which I don't think is requiring a lot of effort. Let's bring women up to the same. Let's make sure they're recognized at the same level as men.
Right.
Instead, what we're doing,
we're bringing men down.
Exactly it. That's what we seem to be doing,
Yeah, and it's disturbing to me because I saw a T-shirt the other day that said like, "I'm a girl and I can do anything, and I can do it better than any boy." Right?
Right.
I'm a girl and I'll beat you over the head, kind of thing.
Well, an example of something in the real world that happened to me recently. And again, this is a great gal. She works out at the same gym, and she's a coach over there, and I love her dearly. And she's fit, and she's in great shape. But I walked into the gym the other day, and she was having this conversation. I happened in on it, and she was talking about how she was so pissed off at some guy because she was like, "How freaking dare," using the language that this was like. This is what part of the reason I left the biker community, because I couldn't take the language anymore.
Right.
Come on, guys, let's rise above this a little bit.
Yeah.
We don't need
it's a little gratuitous.
We don't need to drop the F-bomb 7 times
in one sentence.
Yeah. So this is what I was overhearing, right?
Right.
Like, drop the F-bomb every day. But the protest was that some guy offered to help. Can I help you with that? Let me help you pick up. She had a weight on the ground, a couple dumbbells, and the guy offered to help put it on the rack for her. And she was pissed off about that. She's like, "I don't need some guy putting back my weight. I don't need some guy holding the door open for me. F-bomb this." But what's that about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I said, I can tell you what that's about. I happened in on it. And she was like, I said, "I can't help it. I've got to intervene."
Yeah.
That's a man being a man, being courteous, being thoughtful. Chivalry is not quite dead yet, even though you might like it to be.
Yeah.
We don't think it's not that he thinks you're not strong enough to put that back or capable back. It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
It's that he wants to help. He wants to be of service in many respects, you
Yep.
know? Well, we
Yep.
hold it open. That's the only reason, not because you're less, because you can't handle opening your own door.
Yeah.
You know? So I think you're right. I think masculinity in that respect is being taken away. It's being shunted. And,
Yeah.
and
Well,
you're
and
right.
the things that men like
Yeah.
I have a girl and a boy, you know, and they're night and day for sure. But,
Mhm.
you know, the things that like I grew up in Canada, you know, we didn't even have guns there. My son was born in Canada and we lived there till he was 2. And I had this kind of like, oh, you know, I'm probably not going to buy him guns because I grew up in Canada, right? You know
Yeah.
what he did? He made guns out of rocks. You know?
Absolutely what they do.
That's
They're
what
going
they
to.
do.
Yeah.
It's what they do. And he play fought constantly.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's who he is. He
Right.
likes target practice. We have a shooting range out here on our little farm. He's out there all the time. He's fighting in a gym with mixed martial arts. He's a boy,
Yes. Yes.
you know,
I
and
hate to be facetious, but let's take that toy gun away and put him in a dress.
yeah,
It's happening. It's not like it's not happening. It's happening.
right.
You know, you have to have an opinion about
Yeah.
it. And I hate to sound like old school, you know, antiquated, coming from a different generation and stuff, but it's just not now. And I think we have 3 basic needs as men, as all men. One is an adventure to live. We've got to have an adventure.
Yes.
Have to have something, and whether it's out hunting or something. I'm not a big believer in hunting. It's not my thing. You know, I have a friend who's a very dear friend, a very successful attorney. He's a big game hunter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not
Right.
my thing. He wants to show me his big game every time he gets something. It's like, nah. But an adventure of some kind.
Yeah.
You define that.
Pushing their limits a little bit.
Absolutely. For me, it's getting on a motorcycle with my crew, with my guys, my buddies, and riding the Sturgis or staying overnight in some campground. That's an adventure, you know?
Yeah.
The other is a beauty to rest. Men need a beauty. And then I'm trying to remember who was it defined it. It was Wild at Heart. I'm trying to remember the author, a Christian author, John Eldridge, called it a beauty to rescue. And it doesn't, that doesn't mean women or the beauty needs to be rescued. But think about the classic movie. The knight in shining armor shows up and rescues the princess. This is our fantasies. These are our dreams. This is what we live for in many respects.
You want to be needed.
Absolutely. We want to be needed.
But everybody does.
We want to be able to come to the rescue.
Yeah.
Whether you need it or not.
Yeah.
Picking up that weight, holding the door is coming to your rescue to a degree.
Yeah.
If you have tears in your eyes, I know when my wife has a tear in her eyes, when we're frustrated, discouraged, we're being beat down for whatever the reason might be, just a simple hug and telling her it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Just those simple words is coming to the rescue. And being able to, that having my masculinity taken away does not allow me the power to be able to do that.
Right.
The third thing I believe every man needs is the ability to be able to contribute, to feel important in some way, to feel needed, whether it's through our family or through others or for a business that serves.
Being a dad.
Yep. And those things are being, and I hate to say it because it sounds victim-like in our mentality when we say taken away.
Right.
But they're those things, those basic elements for men, and our masculinity is being challenged. Certainly.
Yeah. Well, and it just seen in a negative light. And I have so many wonderful men in my life, and I have to be completely honest that, you know, I've had more trouble with women than I have with men. I mean, I may get shot for that, you know, but that's my truth.
Canada anymore. Be careful.
I know, but that is my truth. That is my truth. I have been nothing but supported and loved by men. And that has not been the case always with women. And I have wonderful women friends. I'm not generalizing, but I definitely know that I've had more trouble on that end than I have with men.
Yep.
And so when I'm raising a boy and I see that everything that he loves and, you know, he's trying to become his own man, and there's society out there saying, bad, you shouldn't like guns. You shouldn't like this. You shouldn't like that. You have to be this way. You know, it's frightening.
It is. Because, I mean, if we look at what might be coming down the road, whether it's 10 years, 20, 50, 100 years from now, what will our society look like? And those roles, how are those gender roles actually going to change? Because the natural order, the natural dynamic is women are women, men are men, and we have our proclivities. And if we take those proclivities away, we change the order. It is going to be conflict.
Yeah.
No different than pursuing a goal, an objective that's inorganic, that's not natural for you. If we're not natural, then it creates even more conflict.
That's what I'm worried about, is all this, you must think this way, you must act this way. But organically, that's not the way they're feeling. That's not the way we're feeling. We're feeling like, actually, I kind of like that. Like,
yes,
there's this conflict.
And that's interesting, because it's not just men that are having it taken away. It's there's something else being forced on women.
Yes.
There's something wrong with you.
Yes. If you don't,
feminine, natural woman, not subservient in any way.
Right.
But if you want to be a woman, it's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right.
I would love for you to carry that weight for me. Thank you. I'm good with that. Like, and you're right.
And for God's sake, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
why?
Yes, it's disturbing. It's disturbing. I try not to let it infiltrate my consciousness too much in terms of how it looks, but and maybe I'm blinding myself to it because it's like I don't know how much impact I can have.
Yeah.
In that respect, all we can do is be who we are, talk about it, share it, let people know that it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay to be a man. It's okay to be a woman, as we were designed to be.
Right.
But
and we're equals. We're equals.
Right.
We don't need to stomp men down in order to get our fair share.
Absolutely.
We don't need to do that.
And it's no different than anything else in society. We don't have to reduce wealthy white people to something bad in order to raise a black community.
Right.
That doesn't serve anyone.
No.
Along the way, it doesn't.
No, it's a back step.
Yeah.
It's going backwards.
Yes.
When we're pushing someone else down to get somebody else up, we're stepping backwards. We're supposed to be striving for equality here.
Yes, exactly. And that's what it should be all about. Yep.
Yes.
And there are some ignorant fools out there that still don't believe in equality between race or genders.
Right.
And they will be few and far between in the future,
Right.
But no one has to be pushed down in order for another group to be raised up. So I guess all we can do is be ourselves and share that, raise our children in a way that is more in line with traditional. And it's tough though, if they're in school, it's not what they're learning for the most part,
Right.
So to answer your question, it is, I see it. I experienced it that day I walked into the gym. I was dumbfounded that a woman who, at the very least, doesn't have to feel threatened.
Right.
Would be threatened by a man wanting to help her pick up the weights, to give her some assistance,
Right.
Why would you feel, the only reason you'd be that exasperated about it is if you were threatened in some way, and it's no reason.
Right.
So yeah, it's a little disturbing, and I'm not thrilled about it by any means,
Yeah.
And in many
I think it's important that we have these conversations, because I myself was like, I need to ask this conversation. I need to ask this question, but do I want to go here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I want to go here? But I have to authentically, I have to go here, because these are the things that I'm worrying about.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're worried about it, then others are too. That. And
exactly.
Listeners are, and they want to hear what you're thinking, what others are thinking, what are they feeling? Am I alone in this?
Yep.
And I'm sure there's going to be listeners that think we're crazy. You're like, what? No, everything that's happening right now is happening for a reason. Everything that's happening is moving in the direction it should be moving. It's the only way we're going to have equality, and I'm sure, they have their reason for believing that. But
but the statistics say different. It actually, men's suicide rate is much higher than women's. Men are attending college at a lesser rate than women now. See, so our numbers are changing. And I think it's great more women are going to college. And I think it's great that, less women commit suicide, but we also like nobody should be committing suicide.
Right.
Right?
More men have depression now. I mean, it's just like, you're right.
Yes, depression. They have no outlet. They have no outlet because their outlets are bad.
Yeah.
Right?
They have no adventure to live. They
Right.
have no beauty to rescue. They're not feeling like they're contributing
Right.
because the essence of who they are is being challenged.
Yep.
Difficult not to. I mean, I've come under attack occasionally on social media for
Right.
doing things that to others would look like more traditional masculine positions or doctrine in some way, shape, or form. I did a project, I'll call it, with a good friend of mine, called the Epic Men Project, and I created what I call the Epic Men Manifesto, the Manifesto.
Okay.
And outlines this. It outlines a lot of. I'll share with you. I'll send you over a copy of the manifesto.
Yeah,
and it's
that'd
exactly
be great.
what I believe. It started out as a mission statement for what we were doing with the Epic Men group.
Right.
It turned into something out of control. It wound up being like a 60, 70-page manifesto. It was supposed to be a mission statement. I couldn't stop.
Right.
I was like, this is this, and this, and how.
Oh, interesting. I had no idea even.
Conduct and all this other. It was like, wow, man. And
Yeah.
it brought to the forefront the idea about this, about what you're talking about in terms of how we can take back our masculinity, how we can stay in touch with who we are as men and live that,
I would say this to women, and this is probably controversial. You may think that you want that. You may think that you want that type of man that doesn't have that, robust masculinity. When you get it, you're not going to like it.
When you get what you think you want.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're not going to like it.
Ladies, I would say this. When you go masculine, you never go back.
Yeah. So true.
Another saying. When your man is in his masculine, that's the other thing that happens. Women get into in a masculine energy, and men are in a masculine energy, and the natural thing that happens, it's like, hey, two guys look at each other in a bar, and it's like, really? Screw you. No, screw you. What happens next? Right?
Right.
Start pushing, start shoving. So what happens to women when they're in their masculine energy, and man is in their natural masculine energy? Either they become submissive or they fight.
Right.
It creates that head-on conflict of energy.
Right.
So yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Lady, you may not like it once you get it.
Yeah. And again, I can't reiterate enough that it's about equality. Like, we're not talking about, man overpowering women with masculinity. Masculinity has become a dirty word.
Mm.
And masculinity is now defined by, the Me Too movement or the all the yucky stuff.
Yep.
It's defined by all the yucky stuff. And that's not masculinity. That is not masculinity.
Yes. In fact, if anything, those abusers of women are the exact opposite.
Exactly.
My father, who was one of the most masculine, who was my mom had most of the power in our family. She was a strong woman. But my father was a masculine man. He had his adventure. He worked hard. He raised 6 kids. He would be disgusted by those men that have abused women in such a way. They are not representatives. The hard-working, the contributors, the men that love their women with every ounce of their being, like I love my wife, like your husband loves you.
Yes.
They're the masculine. They're the energy.
Yep.
And so when we have that working, that dynamic, that natural dynamic working, it works. It just works.
Yeah.
So we can't let those things like the Me Too movement define that or continue to challenge us. So let's just have those conversations and share with others and tell them what we think. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you were, so willing to talk about it, because I know a lot of people shy away from it. And I really want to get the word out there that masculinity is not a bad word.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love it. That's define that. Let's get some t-shirts made up that say masculine.
I love it. Yeah, we totally should. I love it. So this was such a great conversation, Tom. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the Naturally Inspired podcast and, showing up with all your candor today, because that is just such a gift to people to be able to relate to you, to be able to take your story and use you as an anchor that they can do something great too.
Wow. And you can. You have the capability of doing something truly great. And as we talked about earlier, maybe it's just lifting somebody up. Maybe it's complimenting someone. Maybe it's going out of your way to help someone pick up a dumbbell in the gym, whatever it might be. Yeah. Maybe it's bigger than that. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You have the capability of being great.
Absolutely.
And being along the way. And the more confident you feel, the more you're going to be able to manifest that greatness in your life. So let's go after it.
Yeah. Where can people find you real quick? Can you
remember, none of us. Sure, absolutely. There's a couple of sites. One is highachieversuniversity.com.
Okay. Yep.
And maxmindset.com. Maxmindset.com.
Okay.
And my last pitch is if you're interested in something that involves like taking your mindset and your physiology to a whole new level.
Yeah.
And really transforming your life. So you got to see some of the testimonials, some of the success stories we've had.
Yeah.
You can go to maxmindleanbody.com, maxmindleanbody.com, and learn more about that. But for all our programs and all our trainings, High Achievers University or maxmindset.com would be a great place. And also, love to connect with me on Facebook.
Yes. Yeah. Your Facebook is awesome. And that's how we met. Yeah. So yeah, you can be friends with Tom too.
I would love it.
I will put all of your information in the show notes too, so that everyone has access to it. Fantastic. So again, thank you so much for being on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And please tell your husband, who I know is behind the curtain.
Yes, he is.
Doing amazing. Tell him I send my absolute best. Everyone sends her love.
Yes, I will. And mine to Dawn as well.
Thank you, Tammy. This has been an absolute joy. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. I could have went on all night.
I know. I do feel like I could have talked to you all night long. We should go have dinner.
If you are getting hungry, we could. Let's eat, for crying out loud.
We need to have dinner so I can actually meet Dawn.
Got it.
Great. If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.